The insurance company fire brigades were a feature of firefighting in Dublin for 140 years. Like this year, Dublin Fire Brigade, the municipal brigade, is celebrating its 160th anniversary in 2022. But we forget sometimes that for the 140 years before that, the city was largely protected by insurance company fire brigades. There were also parish engines, but the parish engine system was charitably described as haphazard and uncharitably described perhaps as useless. The insurance companies were the backbone of the city's fire service. At one point in the 19th century, there were 17 separate engine houses around the city belonging to different insurance companies who would work together at larger fires, who would work alongside the parish engines, who would work alongside the engines owned by companies like Guinness's and some of the distillers and breweries who'd have their own in-house fire brigades. Um, Over time, however, there were a lot of shortfalls in the system. There was no uniformity in terms of the type of fire engine used or the actual equipment used, different styles of hose coupling, different connections on the engines. So in a lot of cases, they could work side by side, but they couldn't feed one another. One couldn't feed water to the other. Um, it came to a head in a number of fires in Dublin, and in particular at the Kildare Street Club in 1860, when a number of the club's servants died in a fire which put the Kildare Street Club out of action for quite a while. And the Kildare Street Club was the social hub of the British administration in Ireland and of the Irish ascendancy. And it brought very much home to them that Dublin needed a municipal fire brigade. Now, they were late to the game because Edinburgh had fire brigade for 40 years at this point. Belfast had had one for 20 years. Um, but they decided that the City of Dublin, Dublin Corporation, should have its own municipal brigade, and the Dublin Fire Brigade was founded in 1862. When the municipal brigade was founded, it covered the city within the canals. That was the municipal area, and from the docks to Kilmainham. So there was still a demand in the townships of Rathmines and Pembroke and Clontarf and other places for the insurance brigades, because the city brigade wasn't obliged to go there unless by agreement and on payment of fees. So some of the insurance companies remained in place for a number of years afterwards. And as late as 1868, I've come across records of the Royal Exchange and Sun Insurance, and I think the National, operating along with Dublin Fire Brigade at fires in the city. And certainly the chief officer at the time, Captain Ingram, in a report on one fire, stated that he regarded them as part and parcel of the city's fire defences. But gradually the need for them faded. The companies didn't want to pay the expense of maintaining a fire brigade when the city was already maintaining a similar brigade. They passed the responsibility on to, for looking after their customers, onto the city. And the insurance companies began to disband the fire brigades. Usually what they do was literally disband the brigade in terms of letting the men go. Um, the fire engines and firefighting equipment, most of which were quite old by that stage, in some cases up to 100 years old, but they were generally sold at auction either to provincial landowners, people who had big houses in the country and then needed a fire engine in the event of a fire because there was no local brigade, or they would also use it for agricultural use, for watering plants, for filling ponds, emptying ponds. Um, so they tended to be dispersed. The engines tended to be dispersed. In one case, as late as 1878, the Sun Insurance Company still maintained a fire engine in Dublin, but it was no longer operational. And in that year, they decided to donate it to the town of Tenby in Wales, where locals had decided to set up a volunteer fire brigade and had appealed to the Sun for financial assistance. So rather than giving them money, they gave them the Dublin engine. So it was shipped from Dublin, where it had served for many, many decades, across the Irish Sea to a new life as the foundation of the Tenby Volunteer Fire Brigade in Wales. The insurance companies were very much part of Irish life, not just Dublin life, because they very soon realised that there was business in other cities and even large towns, commercial towns around the country. And very soon you had branches set up with their attendant fire engines, fire brigades in Belfast, in Cork, in Limerick, Galway, Places like Newry, which would have been a very active port at the time and had both the port facilities and the associated warehouses. So they weren't just the Dublin phenomenon, they were very much part of the Irish scene. One of the things that the Dublin companies did was they were each given what was called a day of marching each year, which was an advertising day for them, where they would parade their fire engine and crew through the city, a much smaller city in physical terms in those days. They are part of the story of the Irish Fire Service. We forget sometimes that when we remember that Dublin Fire Brigade is 160 years old this year in 2022, that for 140 years before that, the city relied largely for its fire service on the insurance brigades. And in the mid-19th century, there were 17 separate brigades operating. There were also parish fire engines. The parish pumps were still there, but their service was well-intentioned but haphazard at best and utterly useless at worst. The insurance brigades were the first professional firefighters. As they faded out, as they left the scene, the municipal brigades in Dublin and elsewhere began to gradually take over from them. But there's a debt owed by the modern fire service to those who went before. And we should remember those insurance firemen in their 300th anniversary this year.